Good evening. I am so pleased to welcome you tonight to be with us. I know we have members of the Rhodes family tuning in from all over the world, and I know that you are very eager to hear from me and to hear from some of our leadership team about what this fall will look like and how we're managing and how we will manage through what is a very difficult time for all of us. The uncertainty that COVID-19 has brought to our lives, the sense that we are seeing a lot of changes in the ways that we live and work and study. All of that is very unsettling. And while can't say we will have answers to all your questions this evening, we are certainly committed to answering them by keeping track of the questions you ask in through Q&A. You'll see a Q&A box in the bottom corner. Please start sending questions in whenever. If we can't get to them today, we'll add them to our FAQ page on our website, or we'll respond to you personally. My commitment from the very beginning of this has been to be as open and clear and frank with you and with our on-campus community as I possibly could be. I told you that in our view, there were three conditions that would be required in order for Rhodes to be able to reopen in the fall as planned. One was that we would need a first-rate health and safety plan, and we had the responsibility to develop that. The second piece would be that every member of our community would step up and embrace both the letter and the spirit of that plan. And I've been very gratified by what I've heard from you about your willingness to do that and to take the kinds of precautions that have been recommended. The third piece is a piece that really is not in our control, and it is the general state of the health ecosystem in Memphis and our region. And I was very hopeful at the beginning of the summer. We had seen some progress here. People were masking and distancing. But when the city began to reopen, we very quickly saw just alarming trends start to develop. And over the last several weeks, those trends have become very serious for us here in Memphis. We have said all along that in addition to those conditions, our planning would be guided by a set of core values, health and safety at right up there as very important, your health, your safety. The excellence of our academic program would be a top priority and a core priority. Offering opportunities for student support, also central to our values. And then thinking about students as individuals and making sure that we were making decisions that that allowed each student to succeed to the very best of our ability. And finally, that we would be thinking not just about the short-term health, financial health of Rhodes, but the long-term picture as well. When we planned this webinar and invited you first, I thought what we would be meeting tonight to talk about would be our health and safety plan, that you'd have a lot of questions. How long will I have to be quarantined if I'm exposed? Where do I have to wear my mask? Those are good questions, and they're questions that will not go away, because I'm pretty sure that when we do reopen campus, we'll still be in a time when that plan will be relevant to us. But in the interim and over the last several days, we prepared for our Board of Trustees a full report on the state of the ecosystem around health in Memphis and its impact on our plan, and the advice that we received from health experts and people very close to this and people who know Rhodes very well from across the country. And it was not a pretty picture. Any of you can look at some of those health indicators, and you probably are following this in your own communities. Some of the things that may be most relevant for some communities are less relevant for a college community. Some of you have written into me to say, our students are young people, they may not come down with this very seriously. We know that young people are very likely to be carriers of this and to infect others, but they're often likely to be asymptomatic themselves. Perhaps we can take more risks. And there is certainly some truth to that, which is why we can consider reopening at all. But we're not immune or separate from that ecosystem either. So for example, when cases rise in Memphis, the testing labs become very full. And so where our plan says that if you've been exposed, you need to be tested, and then you need to be quarantined until that test comes back negative. When we're in a situation where the testing period is 24 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours, that feels reasonable. We can manage that. Right now, testing in Memphis, asymptomatic testing, is averaging between 6 and 8 days. And so you can start to just imagine, even from just that one attempt to apply some of that abstract health information to the Rhodes context, how very quickly we could see hundreds of students in quarantine. And we're picturing what that experience would be like. In your room, whether you're on campus or off, you have to be in quarantine if you've been exposed according to our plan. And that means your food being delivered to you, not having the full campus experience. So that's just one example, but there are many others too. A serious rise in cases in Memphis means that we have to assume that we'll have faculty and staff shortages because they will be infected. We have to assume that, as is the case now, there will be sometimes a serious shortage of hospital beds for the kinds of things that we know students need hospitalization for in a semester. So the ecosystem is not something we can totally separate ourselves from. And we have to look at our plan, think about what it would be like to enact that plan in reality, given the situation in Memphis, and then make our decision about whether or not that is feasible. And our board ultimately decided that it is not right now. As you know from my letter to you, our plan is to reopen our campus as soon as we possibly can. When it is safe to do so, we will invite first our first-year students to campus. And then as conditions improve, we will be able to open campus up for others who may be living nearby. But that could be a while. That's not something that I would encourage anyone to count on in this first semester. We've had a lot of voices and thoughts in coming to this decision. It was, as you can imagine, not an easy one. There is nothing that we appreciate more than having our students here on campus. And it is very painful to every one of us when we are not able to do that. This is not something that we made a decision about lightly or without a great deal of thought, or without running dozens of different scenarios. Well, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if we tried to create a bubble in campus? What if we tried to restrict campus movement? What if we just de-densified in these ways? None of those really passed the past scrutiny at this moment for a variety of reasons. We also were thinking very hard, as you can imagine, about our ability to offer great classes. The relationships between faculty and students are at the core of a Rhodes education. That's at the heart of what we do. And we were asking a lot of our faculty. They were rising to the occasion. We were telling them, you need to be prepared to teach in a high flex way. That is to assume you'll have some students in class, they'll be masked, they'll be spread out. You'll have some students remote, and so you'll be teaching both to some students on campus and to some students at home, and you need to be prepared to do that. They were working very hard to accommodate that, but it's difficult. And part of why we decided that we would maintain remote teaching and learning throughout the semester, even if, for example, we're able to bring some students back to campus, is that we felt that that consistency, knowing now and having that consistency throughout the semester, would enable our faculty to offer you the best kind of educational experience that they can. There's not a college student in this country that is going to be having a normal semester. When you think about what institutions are needing to do, even those that are in places with less serious health indicators than Memphis is right now, campus is going to be odd. People will be masked. They will need to stay 6 feet apart. There will be regular testing and reporting of symptoms. Campus dining will be strange. None of the ordinary things that we associate with campus life will be happening, not just at Rhodes, but really at any campus in the country. So you are not alone in finding yourselves in a very disrupted situation. And we are not alone in having to make unprecedented decisions with your health and safety and with the health and safety of our faculty and staff in mind. I'm grateful to our Board of Trustees, to our faculty leaders and faculty members, our senior leadership team, our Rhodes student government, who has our RSG representatives have been very helpful to us in this decision-making process, and many, many others. And I have several of our leaders here and some faculty members here as well tonight to help answer your questions. I do want to say a quick word about athletics. As our student athletes know, the conference that we're part of, the Southern Athletic Association, the SAA, just announced this evening that there will be no conference athletic play this semester. So again, our student athletes will not be missing out on something that others in our conference will have to do. Other conferences have made this announcement as well. And I know the NCAA is beginning its consideration, which my guess is will lead to the notion that there will not be fall championships either. So, you know, that is still to come, but again, you're going to see other institutions begin to make different kinds of decisions. We'll also, I believe, see institutions opening and then closing very quickly. That was something we wanted to avoid at Rhodes. Our Rhodes mission is to graduate students with a lifelong passion for learning, a compassion for others, and the ability to translate academic study and personal concern into effective leadership and action in their communities and the world. I have every confidence that our Rhodes students graduate ready to do that and with the edge they need to do that. And we remain deeply committed to you, even though this semester will not be anything like what any of us hoped it to be. I'm very happy to take your questions. Many of you have sent in questions, and so we have some that we know are on people's minds, and I see that you're sending questions into the chat. I've asked Dr. Sherry Turner, who is our Vice President for Strategic Initiatives and our Chief Diversity Officer, to assist me with question management. So she'll be looking at the Q&A. If you have questions, don't raise your hands. Use the Q&A function, and that's where we'll find those questions. So Dr. Turner, thank you for being here. I also have some of our other vice presidents here who will bring their expertise to the table. Dr. Catherine Bussard. Dr. Bussard is our brand new provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs. She's also Professor of English and Africana Studies, and we're delighted to welcome her to Rhodes College. It feels as though you have been here a lifetime already because of the work that we have been doing this summer. Similarly, Dr. Megan Hart-Wyant is Vice President for Student Life. She has already been in touch with many of you, and I know you will really enjoy getting to know her. She's building a really powerful student life team and is deeply committed to the co-curricular and the extracurricular experiences of our students. So it's wonderful to have you here. Megan was also co-chaired our Health and Safety Committee, along with Dr. Timothy Hubner, who is our Associate Provost and Professor of History. And Tim is here as well. And then we have 3 faculty members that we want to give an awesome shout out to: Dr. Jeffrey Maddox in the Psychology Department, and Dr. Charles McKinney in the History Department, and Dr. Betsy Sanders in the Computer Science Department. And they too are here it's good to see you. You know, we've all been social distancing this summer, so we rely a lot on this format to see each other as well. And I'm really glad you can be here. I know students will have questions about what they can expect in the classroom. So with that, I am going to pause, and Dr. Turner, I will ask you to ask away. And as I said, we won't be able to get to all of your questions, but we'll save them. We'll see them there in the Q&A. There'll be things that we can put in an FAQ online that we know many of you will have in mind. And then also, of course, we'll reach out to those of you one by one as we can. Dr. Turner? Sherry, you are muted.
I am
You
muted.
need to unmute.
Okay.
Perfect.
But thank you, President Haas. We've received a number of questions already from our participants, and I'd like us to get started with some big picture questions. And one of the questions that has been raised is, why did Rhodes make the decision now? Could we not have waited until we knew that conditions were going to improve? Why make the decision now as opposed to later?
It's such a good question. And I know that college presidents across the country are wrestling with this. I have spoken to many of my friends and colleagues. We did not want to make this decision too early. We knew we had work to do. We were going to be committed to developing a plan. We were going to be committed to doing the kind of education we would need to make sure we could focus on that plan so that we're ready to go when the conditions are ready to go. We had waited with a great deal of hope, feeling that perhaps things would improve. But we also had a sense that this is around the time that really we had to make some core decisions. If we let it go longer, you would already continue to be invested and making investments in planning to return to campus. Our faculty would be busy trying to juggle this multimodal learning, which again, they're amazing, they would do it. But we felt that as soon as we knew, as soon as we really, the data was at the point and we were close enough to reopening that the trend lines were visible, that we were ready to make that decision. And we couldn't have made it much earlier because the trend lines only extend so far reliably. But once we know where we are, we wouldn't gain anything really in terms of meaningful information if we waited another few weeks or 3 weeks. So that was really what led us to doing that. The other thing was, I think, as we did this work to look at how those trend lines were shaping up and what that meant for Rhodes, the experts we consulted were so unanimous. They weren't sort of saying, well, give it another week or two and maybe things will, we'll have a different judgment. They really were pretty clear that this is a moment.
Thank you for that. So I see that tuition is a big concern among our members of the audience. Clearly, room and board won't be charged, but can you talk about the reasoning behind rolling tuition back to the fall of 2017 rates? And how was that decision made?
Sure. It's very important, right? The financial implications of all of this for your family and for the college are significant, and we take that very seriously. So let me just say a few things about that. One is that, as you know, we try to be very fair landlords. We refunded tuition when you left in March, when our upper class students left in March. We will, of course, not charge you room and board for weeks you're not here on campus. If you've already paid for that, we will refund that money, of course. So there will not be charges for that, unless if you're able to come and rehab at campus, if we can issue an invitation to you to join us on campus and you accept that, then we'll prorate your room and board from there. We did feel it was important to acknowledge that this is not going to be the same as a semester on campus. There's just no way we can make it the same. And so we felt that a reduction in tuition was warranted. At the same time, this is not a sort of, well, this is the part you pay for instruction, and then this is the part you pay to be on campus. It doesn't work like that. Your tuition in any year, even if you're paying full tuition, and 90% of you are receiving subsidies from the college in the form of merit aid or need-based aid. So even if you're paying full tuition, your tuition every year is subsidized through our endowment and through gifts. So you never are paying the full cost of what we spend to educate you. That no student does that. You all are the beneficiary of the generosity of strangers who believe in Rhodes and believe that you will make the world a better place because of your Rhodes education. And so that gift subsidy, that doesn't change. We can't affect that, or I mean, we certainly work on affecting that, and but I mean, it doesn't somehow go up to cover automatically if we reduce your tuition in this moment. Moreover, many of our costs at Rhodes remain the same or even increase. Our faculty and staff will still be here ready to educate you and support you and help you grow. Our buildings, we still have to pay insurance on them. We still have to do a lot of things that happen whether you're on campus or not. If we stop doing those things, there wouldn't be a Rhodes for you to come back to. So really what we looked at was what can we do to ease the burden on our families and yet still maintain the strength of Rhodes College and not diminish your education.
Okay. So for those students who may have already paid their room and board, when will they receive refunds?
I'm not sure I know an exact date, but I would think as soon as possible. Carrie, do you have insight into that? I'm not sure I introduced you, Carrie. Carrie is, Carrie Thompson is our Dean of Admissions. You've all probably met him through the admissions process, and also our Vice President for enrollment. So Carrie, do you know when we will be able to do that?
Thank you, Dr. Haas. We don't have a specific day. I would imagine in the next couple of weeks, those families that have already paid room and board, there will be a refund. So that will be forthcoming in the very near future.
Good. And if by some chance you have already paid your tuition as well for this year, we will make that adjustment. So that'll take a little bit because, you know, it's complicated because there are federal financial aid laws that we have to follow. So it isn't just a matter of sort of, we refund it or we take it off the top. We have to go through each student's account one by one, but we are committed to doing that. Thank you.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. There's a question that has to do with any adjustments. When do we know when the correct tuition will appear in the student portals?
I believe we're committed to doing that a week from Friday. Carrie, is that what
That's correct.
Our business office said they could do that? Yeah. So by a week from tomorrow, you should have the corrected information.
Okay, great. And then a question for students who are asking about wanting to take the semester off. Is there a process, or what would be the appropriate step if a student wants to do
Good.
that?
I really appreciate that question because it's a reminder that you still have options. I'm sure at this moment it just feels as though I'm trapped, I'm stuck, I have no options. And you do have options, and we will continue to try to offer you as many options as health and safety allow. So Carrie, can you talk a little bit about some of the options that students will have and how it is that they'll be able to navigate that and learn how to apply for some of those things?
Sure, absolutely. So students, you should expect an email probably Monday afternoon or Tuesday of next week that will explain a number of options and give you a link to complete a form that you'll submit your plan for the fall of 2020. In short, you'll have an option to be a full-time student taking remote courses on campus. You'll have an option to be a part-time student taking remote courses if you prefer. Current or returning students will have an option to ask for a leave of absence for the fall term or for the entire year. And our incoming first-year students will have an option to defer to January and join us then, or defer to join us next fall. So it may be that you'd like to have a conversation with somebody on campus. You'll have the opportunity on that form to indicate that you'd like to talk about this with someone. There'll also be an opportunity to indicate that you have a particular financial concern or any other concern that you might have. So that'll be forthcoming. You should look for that the early part of next week. You should look for adjusted student accounts toward the middle to latter part of next week, next Friday for sure. As Dr. Haas indicated, that is every student's different, every student's circumstance is different. That does take some time to make sure is accurate for every student.
Thank you. And I think that point about asking for advice and to talk it over with somebody is very, very important, because you want to make sure you understand the academic consequences of postponing your education for a semester and how that will affect you. And you'll probably have a lot of questions. And I know your academic advisors and others on campus will be here to talk about that with you. So please do. As Carrie mentioned as well, and this goes back a little bit to the tuition conversation, we know that many of you are facing huge changes in your own financial circumstances. Every year, we work individually with students who have a different financial need pattern that has emerged over the summer. So you can always, any year, write to, I think the box that is probably easiest and quickest for you to write to is FinAid, financial aid, FINAID, at rhodes.edu, or you can just get in touch with one of us and we'll direct you there. But we are always able to and willing to review your financial aid package and see if you qualify for additional financial aid. So please don't hesitate to do that.
So I know that there are individual circumstances that people would need to speak about, but can you speak in general about what would happen for those students who choose to defer? What would be the impact on their financial aid packages?
Carrie, this is a question again. Financial aid is, there are laws and rules that govern it, so we have to be really often look one by one at it. But Carrie, can you say something about it?
Speaking broadly, if a student defers for a semester or for a year, as long as they're in good standing, academically speaking, with the college, they will resume receiving their financial aid and scholarship when they come back to campus. Sometimes individual circumstances are a little different. We would certainly want to know about those if those are to your detriment. There may be an adjustment possible at that point, but no student should worry about taking deferral for a term or for a year. They should be able to come back and resume receiving their normal financial aid package.
Good, thank you. I see also that some of you are raising your hands. It's actually, don't do that. Put your questions in the Q&A box on the right side there. Click there and you'll be able to enter your question.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. There are questions related to, the campus and what will be taking place. So one question in particular asks what professors will be doing to make the remote learning environment better than it was in the fall. Like, what plans are faculty members making?
I have some faculty here, and part of what happened in the spring, of course, was that we had to pivot. I mean, the thought of having to make those changes so suddenly. Here we'll have a little more planning. So I don't know who would like to go first. Jeff, do you want to start?
So thank you, President Haas, for having me, and welcome to Rhodes as we navigate COVID. And it's going to be wonderful and it'll be great. And I will say one advantage that President Haas mentioned earlier with regard to making the decision now is that faculty can wholeheartedly, full throttle approach what courses will look like remotely with plenty of time to do that. We're also bringing to the table experience from the spring semester. And some of us have actually been teaching courses over the summer. And so I'm one of those individuals. I'm currently teaching the course right now. And I think before kind of turning more directly to what this may look like, I think we will all have to remind ourselves that Rhodes has a shared set of values and morals that lead us and guide us in our academic explorations. And so kind of to see how that manifests, even today, teaching a course on Zoom, some of the students were responding and reacting to going remote, and we're also kind of championing the features of Zoom. And so what's happening as we're talking in class is we have this ongoing conversation in the chat as well. And all of the things that are occurring in our discussions and in our seminars are happening in Zoom, right? And that's a reflection of Rhodes and what we value and what we do. And so I'm talking about how we use technology in the classroom. This is a course on education technologies, actually.
Oh.
And we were talking about an assessment tool and how we use that to evaluate what we're doing in the classroom. And the students are bringing in connections to mythology, connections to religion, connections to clinical and counseling. And so all of the things that drive what we do at Rhodes are still present on Zoom. The second major point I would say in terms of thinking about what teaching remotely allows us to do, or maybe what it forces us to do, is it kind of confronts us and says, how are we going to do this differently? How can we break this system and get really creative about this? And what technology also allows for in these moments is more differentiated learning, deeper learning, more creative learning. And so at least on my end, what that looks like from top to bottom, my 100 level course all the way through my 400 level course, is that we can do much more individuated projects and much more one-on-one work as we go deeper with a different use of class time. And so you can have more freedom within my spaces to explore those topics of really, really, really critical interest to you, and think more intimately about the intersections of psychology and mythology, psychology and English, psychology and Africana studies. So I think there are going to be a lot of ways that we can flip this, and that's going to look like flipped classrooms. That's going to be creative use of in-class time and out-of-class time. And I'm going to be quiet and defer to the other two who may have other insights to share.
Thank you. Dr. McKinney, I would love your thoughts. I know you also are a father of a college student. So you are seeing this from, as many of the people on the call are tonight, you are seeing this from that perspective as well.
Yes, definitely. Thanks for having us on, Dr. Haas. I won't speak too terribly long to Betsy and Kathy and Tim as well, so they how academic affairs well in terms of health. One of the things that I think is important to remember is how how our idea, our understanding of in-class experience would be really compromised in this moment, right? That's one of the things that we have to remember. So that's one of the things that we have to remember.
Yeah, go ahead. We've got some technology issues. Chuck is like this in his classroom too, these long pauses. Betsy, I'm going to go to you while Dr. McKinney fixes his technological problems.
Sure. I would just add, I would say in the spring, we really had a week to shift to online courses. And this summer, we knew that we were going to have to be partly remote. I mean, we knew that we had some international students that wouldn't be able to join us, other people that had health issues that wouldn't be around. And so we've been preparing all summer for learning these new technologies, thinking creatively on how to disseminate information to all the students. We've also been doing things like, we have a great, I can say in our department, we've been talking about how are we going to run our tutoring center? How are we going to engage students? I just had a meeting today with my department. I'm talking about how are we going to provide programming for the students so that they will feel like they're engaged and get to know us. And so we are still going to give that small liberal arts experience that everybody is going to love. We just won't see each other in person. It won't quite be the same. But we are committed to being really great teachers. We will be there. The faculty are learning how to be good teachers. We had a week to learn, but now we are ready to do it. We're excited. We are thinking creatively and having conversations. We are all hands on deck right now, I would say.
Thank you. Dr. McKinney, look at in real time
Yes.
demonstrating how we respond to a technological issue. I love it. So
Right, we just keep it moving. The only thing that I don't know when I froze up, but the one thing that I wanted to emphasize was to steal a comment that Jeff Maddox made when we were talking a couple of days ago, is that if we were to go back on campus, that experience would be fundamentally compromised.
Mm-hmm.
Right, a critical mass of the things that we do, that we take for granted, that the ways in which we're able to engage, we wouldn't be able to do. Right. Teach history. So 15 in class, we've just finished reading a great essay or an article, and hey, 3 groups, break up into small groups, discuss the article, let's get back together and talk about it and tell me what your group said, right? That's off the table, right? That can't happen now in person, right? So a lot of the nuances, a lot of the sort of the nooks and crannies of the face-to-face experience are fundamentally compromised in this moment. So that's the other thing that we have to remember, right? That if we were to go back to campus, the fall of 2020 would not look like the fall of 2019 or the fall of 2018 or the 2017. Those would not be similar experiences. And so, and I just want to give a shout out to Academic Affairs in terms of all of the resources that they were able to provide us on a dime, right? Really quickly in terms of opportunities, all manner of resources. I took a class to help me sort of think through and cultivate some online learning. And so there are communities and resources, the Associated Colleges of the South, one of the academic consortia that we are a part of, has also started to set up some systems and structures to help us think through and think about this transition. But the thing that anchors all of this, I would say, is its experience,
mm-hmm.
right? We like to provide what I like to call intimate intellectual arts. So we are, so that's our starting point, right? Is we are small and we think in terms of class sizes of 15 and 20. And so we're thinking about individual learning. We're thinking about small groups. We're thinking about all of the ways that we can interface in these really personal and close ways. And so is there a shift? Is there a transition? Most definitely. Is it insurmountable? Absolutely not. We can surmount this. This can happen. And I've seen it happen. I've seen lots of victories. I saw, it was a very challenging last semester, but I saw a lot of victories. And I know I can speak personally in terms of thinking about and thinking through the ways that I'm going to be able to access an array of resources to provide the world-class education that you parents are paying for. So yeah, we can do this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Megan, we'll have a full suite of academic support services and tutoring, all of those pieces, accommodations for students who need them. Yes?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Students can
Good.
expect that all of the services that they're used to on campus, and in some ways even expanded, right? We're working, for instance, in the counseling center, imagining how we can provide extended support for students. We're also trying to think about wellness across multiple dimensions, not just mental health, not just physical health. How do we support career readiness, community readiness, creative capacity across multiple dimensions of well-being?
Perfect. Thank you so much. Dr. Bussard, can you talk a little bit, I know the faculty had sort of made some commitments to focusing on kind of real-time education. That was one of the things we learned in the spring. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. And then maybe, I don't know if you or one of the members of your team is best equipped to talk a little bit about, what about science labs? Science is such an important part of the Rhodes experience. We have lots of students who major in science fields, lots of pre-med students. What are we gonna do about that?
Well, first of all, where do I sign up for Dr. McKinney, Dr. Sanders, and Dr. Maddox classes?
Yes.
I first of all, thank all of you for being here. It just shows how much students you care about your education, and parents how much you care about your students. Like Dr. McKinney, like Dr. Hubner, we're all parents of college students. The questions are not unlike questions we would be asking or have asked, and questions that we've heard from our kids in this really difficult time. I have no doubt in my mind that this faculty is going to deliver an excellent educational experience, advising those of you who are sophomores trying to choose majors who need access to faculty who can help walk you through that crucial and important process. We are committed to giving the faculty what they need to continue to meet you in your classroom in a very personal way, to form community. No, it's not the same. Yes, we all want to get back to face as soon as possible. We're not accepting this as the new normal, but it's what we have to do right now. But it will still be up to the Rhodes standard of excellence, and that we can promise you. So we're all excited about having you as part of this community, starting virtually, but hopefully at some point face-to-face.
Yeah. Science labs, who is prepared to talk about that in some detail? Tim, is that you? Nope, because we just lost.
Thank you. And I will just add on to what our outstanding new provost has already said, that first of all, we have an outstanding faculty, and I think you've just heard from 3 of them. These are some of the most creative and innovative people that I've ever met. Our faculty are working tirelessly, and this is also true of those who are in studio art and lab sciences.
Yeah.
They are working with each other to come up with the best possible solutions. They already have some experience, obviously, from spring semester. They, if you were to look up the series that we had sort of written by faculty members in the spring, it's a series posted on our website. It's called Remote But Close. What you'll see there is that artists and scientists and others were able to talk about the very unique and interesting experiences that they were able to have with their students. As we have said, this is not our ideal, but it's something that we are absolutely committed to doing, is working with our students in this way. As I said, our faculty are extremely innovative, and they're working very hard, and we are extremely confident that in the fall, our artists, our lab scientists, and others will be able to have exceptional experiences for all of our students.
Good. I know they were sending equipment last semester, so they put boxes together and sent them to students so that experiments could be formed at home. They use software where you can do virtual experiments. They assigned labs where you can do them in the safety of your kitchen. Goggles, I'm sure, were sent. So they are working through that. Again, we're fortunate in the sense that we're connected to consortia for teaching really around the world. And so we are getting the best advice and the best ideas as well. So I appreciate that. Dr. Turner, I'm sure there are more questions coming in. And again, just a reminder, don't use the hand raising function. Type your question into the Q&A on the right-hand side at the bottom of your screen. And that way, Dr. Turner will be able to see them. And you can see there's more questions coming in than we probably can answer tonight, but we will make sure we get answers to them.
Yes, and President Haas, we're getting a lot of questions from students who have questions about accessing campus facilities. Can you speak to, getting to the library or,
Sure. Yes. And this is I assume you're talking about students who perhaps live in Memphis or are planning to live in Memphis this semester. While our campus is closed, as it has been this fall and summer, we can't have you access those. It's just not safe. When we're able to reopen campus, though, that is exactly what we will hope to do. So as conditions improve in Memphis, we will first invite our first-year students to come back to campus and move in into single rooms. We'll be thrilled to have you. And then, assuming that the health conditions allow it and we have the capacity and the situation has gotten to the point where we can manage it, then we hope to allow students to do that. remember that once that happens, if you are allowed to access campus, then you will need to follow all of the guidelines of our health and safety protocols. That means not just when you're on campus, but when you're off campus too. So you'll have to be committed to that plan in order to access campus when it's available, but we can't wait. I mean, there's nothing we would like better than to have you on campus. So.
President Haas, we have a great question from the parent of an incoming first-year student who was really hoping to be on campus this fall. And the question is, you know, given that Rhodes has gated entrances, why couldn't we just close the campus and require everyone to be tested, and then anyone coming in could go through symptom checks, and then perhaps require masking or things like that to create a safe environment?
Yes, it's a great question. And some of that is a piece of our plan, right? When our campus is open, you will come into campus, you will have symptom checks every day. You will be tested before you're allowed back on campus. But we can't do what maybe this questioner is asking, which is, why can't we kind of use, there's sort of two models that I've learned about as we've been working through this since March. There's kind of the bubble model. You've probably heard that because that's the model the NBA is trying to do, where you say, what we're going to do is we're going to get a bunch of us together, we're going to test everybody. And once you've tested and you're fine, you can be in the group. And then we'll assume that we can be more lax once we're all together, like we could play basketball together because we have a sense that people are safe. That's not possible at Rhodes. It's not possible because while we do have gates around our campus, they really are designed to be helpful, not to be gatekeepers. We have people there to help you navigate campus, but they're not designed to sort of be a bubble where you can't leave. So part of the bubble rule, right, is you can't leave campus. And again, many of our students live off campus, even our first year students. I have a feeling will want to be in Memphis and will want to be doing things. So we didn't see the bubble model as really viable. And plus, of course, our faculty and staff come and go and live in the community and have children and parents that they care for. So we couldn't do the kind of bubble model. There are some colleges that are trying this model. We'll watch how they do. They're mostly schools that are in very rural areas. So there are liberal arts colleges that are way, way out without much around them and a lot of acreage around their campus. And some of them are trying that model. I've spoken to colleagues who've said, yes, our students will come on campus and they will not be able to leave because we're making a bubble. That we just didn't feel that was something that would make sense at Rhodes, or that would, as Dr. McKinney was saying before, if the on-campus experience is awful, then the remote experience might be better than what that on-campus experience has to be. So that's why we haven't tried that model. But I'll be interested to see if it works. It doesn't seem to be working so well for the NBA right now.
Wow. So that was a question regarding a first-year student. I'm going to switch to the other end of the spectrum. This is a question pertaining to incoming seniors, rising seniors.
Mm-hmm.
Would the college consider allowing just seniors on campus during the fall and spring semester for both the Rhodes experience and then access to resources, particularly given that it is their last year at Rhodes?
Oh, I'm thinking about you as seniors. You know, we saw how painful it was for our seniors in the spring. And of course, our incoming freshmen all had that same experience of missing out on their senior year of high school. So we are aware of that. We have not made decisions about spring if we couldn't reopen fully. We as I said, we just haven't made decisions about that. But our hope and plan, and still we have no reason at this point to think that we won't see some progress in Memphis by then. Mask up Memphis, please. But we hope to be in that situation where we can open, with our plan in place, but open fully in the spring. As the semester moves on, if it becomes clear that that's not possible, seniors will certainly be at the forefront of our thinking. we're very aware of that, the importance of that bonding for your senior year.
What about students being able to engage in community service and internships? How do you foresee that?
That's a great question. Dr. Wyatt, can you talk a little bit about that? How does that intersect with our plan? I mean, certainly remotely, yes, absolutely. So
yes, and our career services team, our experiential learning team, our academic implementation team has already been talking about what this can look like and how we can help students who are in communities and working with community partners or employers who are willing to host interns or other experiential opportunities, how we will help provide and navigate that experience with them. So we're working on that, and we'll be able to give more information in the upcoming weeks about what that will look like and what that process will look like.
mm-hmm.
We would say that, part of this is going to really depend on the community partner or the employer you're working with and what they're willing and able to do this year too. One of the things we know about experiential learning is that it's really important that we are being most helpful to the community partner we're working with and serving. And so to the extent that's possible in your local community or here in Memphis, both student life and academic affairs will stand ready to support students in doing.
And, I one of the challenges in Memphis, again, is the current health structure doesn't just affect Rhodes, it affects everybody. And so I know my daughter's company, they've said they're not going to bring people back to the office until January. There are other companies like that. So some of those opportunities for in-person internships will be remote this year or this fall anyway. And again, if you're home and you find opportunities there, if you're in a place where you can be in person, we will support that. So I think we'll the advantage of being Rhodes and the advantage of being a campus that's relationship driven is we will work with you one by one to help you make the best plan. And we can do that in a way that we really couldn't do it when we were just pivoting in the midst of crisis in March. So we have had some time, obviously time over the summer and time now between now and when school starts to really try to do this better.
Here's another great question from a student. What happens to their work study job? Is Rhodes going to just take the federal work study money that they're supposed to be getting? Can you speak to that?
Yes, you mean take it and hoard it somehow? I know the answer to that is no, we will not be doing that, but there's probably a more complicated and complex answer. So Carrie, please tell us about that.
Sure. Because it is a complicated and complex answer, I don't know that I have a complete explanation for every job on campus. We have lots of different kinds of employment.
Right.
Just for everybody's information, it's an 80-20 split with Rhodes institutional money being the 80%. So we meet the federal match 4-to-1, and we'll be looking at ways that we can employ students in jobs that make sense in a remote basis. And we'll have more information on that in the next week or two.
Right. So another way of saying that is if you have a work study job, 20% of that is coming, for every dollar you earn, 20 cents comes from the federal government and 80 cents comes from us, from Rhodes. So we have had students employed since March in work study jobs remotely, and we hope to be able to continue to do that.
Okay.
Who should they contact, Carrie, if they have a question about their work study jobs?
Well, we'll have an announcement about that in the next week or two.
Okay, perfect.
At that point, financial aid at rhodes.edu.
And we'll put all this information on our website on our FAQ questions, so you'll be able to see them and they're organized.
Okay. We have a number of questions that focus on housing and just sort of some of the logistics. And I will say that we've talked a lot about the big picture questions. Many of these questions focus on very specific aspects of the Rhodes experience. And so there's a question concerning students with off-campus housing, should they plan to just stay home, or, how should they think about their plans for the fall?
You mean whether students should plan to come to Memphis and be here or stay home? Or Megan, if you could talk a little bit about that. Maybe, I'm sure people are wondering too, well, I signed up for housing for the year and now I know I might be able to come if I'm a first year. Talk a little bit about what spring, what that is about. What should students think about?
So in terms of spring housing assignments, our hope at this juncture is to allow students to return in the spring in the housing assignments that they received during our process this past spring. And the housing assignments they would be hoping to return to now during the fall. So we'll kind of just delay that. And our hope is that those assignments we can use when you return in the spring, and we can kind of kick off our in-person year together. The question as it relates to, what about if I already rented a place off campus, what should I do now? I think that's a conversation, and Dr. Haas, you mentioned this earlier, that's really a conversation for individual students to have with their families. We would encourage you to really think about the conditions here in Memphis, right? We are certainly concerned about the conditions in Memphis and the impact of all of our returning to Memphis and the impact that would have on the community. And so we want students to be really mindful about that and thinking about what their time should look like if they do come back to return to their rental on campus, right? All of those same health and safety criteria that we laid out in the health and safety plan that we shared earlier would be something we would want you thinking about. The last thing we would want is groups of students returning and then further, adding to the collective public health concerns that we have here in Memphis and taking away from the resources of the local community. And so we would encourage students and families to have those conversations together and determine, what's possible and what's best for you and your family.
Good. And we're here to guide you about that.
Mm-hmm. Lots of questions. There's a question concerning, or several questions related to academics and classes. Will students be able to change classes if they've already signed up? Especially there's a studio art class, or a class that a student might feel they can't take virtually.
Mm-hmm.
But then also questions about the pass-fail options. And, there are a lot of students who may not excel or feel that they could excel with remote learning. And so I'm wondering if people can speak to those.
Dr. Bussard?
Thank you for the question. First of all, in terms of the being able to change classes, yes, within the guidelines of the add drop period. For pass fail and add drop period and all of these different policies, the good thing about having made this decision now is that faculty have time to review all of these academic policies, talk them through thoroughly, think about the implications both for your classroom experience and also for your later career path, and have policies in place, which we will announce to you ahead of time. So we're not on the fly having to suddenly think about, what a pass-fail option would look like or how to extend deadlines or things like that. So all of that will be in place and we'll be communicating that to you. I will say this about pass-fail. I understand the anxiety of these are not normal times. Nothing's normal. Nothing's as fun as it should be, and worrying that you won't be at your best in your class. But we're committed to being as flexible as we can while maintaining the excellence and the integrity of the experience in the classroom at Rhodes. And Dr. Huebner, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
I would only add that, that's absolutely right. And our faculty will be looking at all of these policies in the next few weeks, and we'll be getting back to folks with more information soon.
Our goal is to support you, and to do it in a way that builds for your future. You'll want to talk with your advisor about some of these decisions so that you're making not just decisions that feel best in the moment, but that you're aware of what impact they'll have on your transcript and those sorts of things. And I see Dr. Maddox nodding and Dr. Sanders, and I'm sure Dr. McKinney is nodding as well. You know, your faculty advisors will be happy to talk with you. Absolutely. Good.
Are course schedules going to change at all?
Jim? Not unless a student were to change them, right?
Right. So the schedule that is posted and that students have already registered for, that schedule will stay the same. But if you want to make changes, you can do so through the normal drop ed process, just like you ordinarily would.
Good. Excellent.
Looking at other questions. Perhaps it would be useful to talk about the cost of taking 1 or 2 virtual courses versus a full load. This particular student is not necessarily sure that they would want to pay full tuition for online instruction.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you know, you're talking about taking a leave of absence and then taking classes online, like just a few classes. Yeah, I'll defer to Tim about academic policy, but you leave of absences are not for the purpose of taking classes elsewhere. They're for the purposes of, you know, exploring other opportunities. So there may be ways to take a class or two, but that mechanism would be more complex, I would imagine. Is that true?
Sure. So a student could go through the process of trying to get an actual leave of absence that goes through the faculty committee on standards and standing. But if the student is asking about whether to take a part-time load of courses as opposed to a full-time load, I think that is one of the options that we'll be rolling out. Isn't that right, Gary?
That's correct.
Good. So you also have that option.
There are adjustments to merit scholarships are not provided to part-time students.
Is need-based aid or just need-based aid is, but not merit scholarships?
Need-based aid would be prorated for part-time hours.
Okay. So again, that would be something to talk about with advisors to see how that applies there. Good.
There's a question concerning how we're going to be supporting international students. Can international students apply to stay on campus in the same way that they did in the spring?
Yes, we have many international students who've been living on our campus all semester because they didn't have another place to go, and we've been caring for them. I'm grateful to the overwhelmingly supportive voice with which the Rhodes community spoke out in favor, in support of our international students over this recent kerfuffle about their potentially losing their visa statuses if their colleges had to make decisions based on health and safety. That was a shocking turn of events, and I was very involved at this at the federal level and with organizations that speak on behalf of students, as I have been for a long time. And I'm delighted to say that has been rescinded and has given us more flexibility. So thank you. This was a moment when higher education spoke with one voice, and we really had an impact. And I'm just grateful to our campus here and afar who really spoke up on behalf of our international students. So yes, we will accommodate students, and we have other students as well who have special housing needs, and we address those in the spring, and we will certainly address them in the fall. So please let us know if you are in that category, and we will work with you.
Dr. Haas, I should mention that next week when we send that email and you're able to complete the form for your fall plan for fall 2020, that is a question.
Great.
Answer along the way.
Perfect. So that's going to be when you get that email, it's going to come from you, Carrie. So it'll come from Carrie Thompson, our Dean of Admission, and pay attention to that because it sounds like there'll be a lot of information and also opportunities for you to really let us know what you need.
Okay. President Haas, will students who live off campus have access to the COVID-19 care clinic or the virtual care clinic?
I'm really glad you asked that. That's something we are needing to work through, and we will get an answer to you as soon as we possibly can. One of the pieces that you have to understand is if you have access to that, you are signing on for the full program. That means you are committing to follow all of the rules and regulations, even if you're living off campus. So you're masking, you're social distancing, you're doing all of those sorts of things that you would be doing as if you had access to campus. So, some of you may want that, some of you may not. But yes, we will try to get information. We, of course, want to care for as many of our students as we possibly can. Megan, did you want to add something to that?
No, we'll definitely have more information about that in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah. We've already had a chance to put it into practice. As I said, we have students living on campus, and we have many of our workers are on campus this summer as essential workers caring for those students. And so we've had virtual care, and we have had a house call already. So we know the plan works. It's a good plan. And as soon as conditions allow it, we'll look forward to welcoming students back.
Okay. Do we have more time for questions, President Haas?
I think we do. I don't want to keep people too long, but I certainly have energy for some additional questions, and we're not going to get to all the questions today anyway. So we'll, as I said, we'll have them there and we'll go through and answer them. So good. But let's take two more questions if our panelists have things, and we've got over 900 people on this Zoom from, I think, a variety of different time zones, including, as I said, from all over the world. So we want to be respectful of that, even as we want you to know we will take your questions seriously.
And at one point we had over 1,000 people on the call. And so this question has to do with how would clubs, sports, and other activities outside of classes continue if we're operating remotely? And then what would that be up to the club leaders or coaches' discretion? Can you talk about that?
Sure. I'm going to defer to all things co-curricular, Dr. Megan Hart-Wyatt.
Yeah, we actually just had a team meeting in student life. Both student life and our athletic staffs met this afternoon to begin thinking about exactly how we would do this and how we would implement this. And so certainly I don't have specifics right now, we would use this platform or we would use that platform. But over the next couple of weeks, just like has been mentioned earlier, one of the reasons that compelled us to make a decision sooner rather than later about a remote versus in-person experience was the time that this gives us to build a robust plan for student life and student engagement. And that goes to all the topics that have been brought up here tonight, right? How will we best support experiential learning and internships? How will we support student clubs and organizations? How will we support the important work around equity and inclusion? And even as it relates to athletic teams, and the well-being and connection that comes along with being part of those teams. So I know our team will be working feverishly over the next couple of weeks to think about how we best support health and well-being and the connection and engagement that is just really paramount to the Rhodes experience. And so you'll be getting updates from the student life staff and advisors and kind of groups that you meet and connect with regularly, whether that's student organizations or rec sports and intramurals. You'll be getting updates about that as we begin to put together programs. And I do think it's important that we're working closely with RSG. We also have a group of students that is advising me closely on how we can best make sure the things that are most important to students are being attended to in these upcoming weeks. And so as students have ideas or things that they want to make sure we're not forgetting, maybe because it's just a small group of students or something like that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly and we'll make sure that we get those supported.
One thing to note that might be helpful too is I know some of you have written in to ask about the activity fee. The activity fee, that money goes to the allocations board. That's money that is students collect from everybody, and then they distribute it, and they distribute it for those student activities. So, to the extent that we want to have that kind of club activity and students having resources to do those sorts of things, that's where that activity fee goes. It doesn't come to the college directly. That's where the allocations board gets its money. So, I think Megan, you've been talking with RSG about, they don't want to collect more money than is meaningful that they can use in the semester. So I think they've had some conversations about that too.
RSG has, and I'll be working closely with our student activities staff as well as the allocations board to see how they would like to proceed and how we can best support. One thing students may know is that your activity fee is kind of levied over 2 semesters. And so certainly we want to be mindful and hopeful that we'll be back in the spring and can be using that fund just as it was intended. But there certainly is room here for the allocations board and the student voice to be heard about how we want to proceed with the fall fee.
Right.
And so President Haas, this last question is
Sure.
for you. And it is, can you talk about the financial health of Rhodes? In a worst case scenario where we might lose the entire school year, will Rhodes be able to weather an event like that?
I'm so glad you asked that. As you can imagine, this is a huge piece of what I have been thinking about since March. And we are very fortunate to have a campus that we really are able to come together and have some hard conversations. So I have been working with our faculty, our staff, our board of trustees since the very beginning. And in March, when we made that decision, because it was the right thing to do, and that's how we roll, to return room and board. Many colleges didn't feel they were able to do that, but we knew that we would do that. We came together on campus. We developed a plan to meet that need. We took some money from our reserves. We used some money from, fortunately, we got some money from the government through the CARES Act, a piece of that, not all of it by any means, but we were able to think about that. Moving into the fall, we knew that revenue would be probably less than is typical. Even if we were on campus, we knew that, because we know that we need to make additional financial aid available to you, because many of you are, your family, someone has lost a job, and we need to help you complete your education. We knew that it would be a more difficult recruitment year because you weren't able to come and be on campus, and students who come for that visit and fall in love with Rhodes. So we worked with our faculty and staff. We made the decision that we would maintain full employment both in the fall and the spring. I know how much our students care about not just their faculty, but every staff member at Rhodes, and we made that commitment. And we were able to do that. Everyone on campus has taken a cut to their compensation. That was something that we did collectively. And we've made other sorts of adjustments to our budget to make sure that we would be in stable financial health. Now, obviously, a remote semester where none of you are living on campus, or, let's not even mention it, possible, if things don't improve across country, or if, God forbid, they get worse. Our board and I have worked very hard to think about not just today, but Rhodes needs to be there for each of you next year and the year after and 4 years from now and 100 years from now. And that matters even if you're graduating, because your degree gets more valuable over time because Rhodes continues to get stronger over time. So we have made a very difficult decision, which is to make use of some of the money in our quasi-endowment. Much of an endowment, this may get a little technical, but I think it's helpful for families to understand. And endowed money is money that is gifted to the college over time, over 100 years. People give money to the college for the purpose of investing it so that it can continue to subsidize the education, your education and your children's education, and on into the future. We take that money, we invest it, and then each year we take a portion of the proceeds of that investment, and we use that to spend on your endowed faculty members. I'm sure there are people on here with endowed chairs, right? So I think Dr. McKinney is an endowed chair. Dr. McKinney, brought to you by donors, right? Your tuition doesn't pay for him. Right. He's a gift to you. So, the endowment, that's how the endowment works. But in our endowment, we also have some money that was gifted to us, not legally as endowment, but as unrestricted. The board could decide what to do with it, and they had put that into the endowment. But legally, we can spend some of that in extraordinary circumstances. And this is certainly an extraordinary circumstance. So the board has made that decision. It means that we have to be very thoughtful. These are going to be tough years for colleges. Families are facing a lot of challenges and difficulties. The stock market, where our endowment is invested, we expect a lot of volatility. We certainly think that it's going to be more difficult for students to visit colleges and to come to think about small colleges like ours. So we're prepared for, some difficult periods, but we have good planners and good, thoughtful people. And it means that we, unlike many colleges, we were able to make this decision truly from a place of what we believe is in the best interests of our students and our community and our college. We didn't have to stand there and say, oh my goodness, if we have to make this health decision, then the college will fold. And I know there are presidents having to make that very hard choice. So it's not easy. Rhodes is a stable financial college, but we certainly are not wealthy compared to our peers. And every single person on campus has made personal sacrifices in order for us to keep Rhodes strong this year and into the future. So I couldn't be prouder of our community for that. We have come together. Everyone agreed that we needed to invest in our students, and we are here to do that. And we cannot wait until we're in a position where it is a reasonable thing to do to invite you back to campus. So I think I will thank our panelists. I will thank you. This is not your only opportunity to ask us questions. You can continue to use that form on the web. Click that button. We get back to you very quickly with that. And it's helpful to us as well when you use that, because then we can see, 10 people have asked this question. That needs to be an FAQ because there's probably 100 more that have it. So each of you who asked a question tonight, you're doing a service not just for you and your family, but for the whole Rhodes community, because there's lots of people with that. Does anyone have a final word or thought, something that we didn't cover that just should be said before we say goodnight? I really appreciate you all spending your time here. Every one of our families, every one of our students is so deeply in my heart. I pray for our college. I pray for each of you every day. And I can tell you that it is the privilege of my life to be the president of Rhodes College. And I take that role very seriously. You can be confident that everyone at Rhodes is giving their very best to you every single day. And we know this is a difficult moment. We know that we will not have unanimous agreement that the decisions we're making are the ones you would have made or would have liked to have seen us made. But I'm grateful that we can remain a community, and I'm grateful for the support that you